All right, today we're going to dive into something really fascinating, maybe even a little unsettling. We're talking about the relationship between making fun of things, a person's character, and that moment, you know the one, when reality finally comes knocking to collect its due.
Yeah, that thought right there, it really sets the stage perfectly for the story we're about to unpack. It's a story of two totally different ways of living and, well, the consequences that inevitably follow each path.
So, here they are. These are the two people at the heart of our story. On one side, you've got the mocker, the person who uses ridicule like it's a shield. And on the other, you have the survivor, the one who just quietly builds their strength. We're going to follow both of their journeys to see exactly where these paths lead. And trust me, it's quite a contrast.
Okay, so let's really dig into the psychology of the mocker. What makes them tick? Why do they do what they do? Here's a hint. It's not really about being funny. It's about hiding something.
And this definition, it's absolutely crucial. See, mockery isn't just a harmless joke. It's more like a psychological fortress, one that's built to hide a really deep-seated fear. The fear that deep down, you're just not good enough.
You can actually break it down into a four-step process. It's pretty fascinating. First, you see a virtue in someone else that you admire, but you know you don't have. Then that triggers this nagging feeling of inadequacy. So what do? You build a defense. You start using ridicule to attack and devalue the very thing you secretly wish you possessed. It's a way of making yourself feel superior.
And what gets targeted? Well, it's always the same kinds of things, isn't it? The person who gets up super early, the one who actually shoulders their obligations without complaining, the person with real integrity who has some moral restraint. The mocker just writes them off as boring or naive. Why? Because if they admitted those things have value, they'd have to confront their own lack of discipline, and that's too painful.
But here's the thing. That shield of mockery, it's not permanent. It can't last forever. Sooner or later, every single one of us has a collision with reality, and this is where the whole story takes a very dramatic turn.
You have to understand, reality is completely uncompromising. The world doesn't bend to your preferences. It doesn't negotiate with your pride. You can laugh at the rules of the game all you want, but you can't actually change them. Reality just doesn't care about your clever jokes or your sarcasm.
So that leads to the central question, right? What happens when the person who spent years scorning discipline is suddenly thrown into a crisis that demands it? Maybe their career starts to fall apart, a relationship ends, or a health crisis just pops up out of nowhere. All of a sudden, the one quality you mocked is the only thing that can save you. What do you do then?
And this is where it all starts to unravel. The whole illusion cracks. The persona you built on being clever and witty just starts to crumble. And every laugh you ever had at someone else's expense, it's not funny anymore. It becomes a weight. Every responsibility you avoided becomes a debt that you now owe to reality.
Which brings us to the internal collapse. See, this isn't just about failing in public. This is about a private psychological reckoning with the unprepared self.
This is where things get really rough inside. You've got this jarring clash of cognitive dissonance, this huge gap between who you pretended to be and who you actually are. That leads to this acute, incredibly painful shame. Your self-respect, it's just gone. And the entire identity you built on being the clever mocker, it just fractures.
You could summarize this whole collapse in just two words: symbolic death.
Now, we're not talking about a physical death, of course. This is the death of the false self. The ego, the one that was all puffed up by making fun of others, is just reduced to a mess of confusion, regret, and complete disorientation.
Okay, so while the mocker is collapsing, let's pivot. What about that other person we met at the very beginning, the survivor? How come they endure when the mocker falls apart?
This quote, it's really the key to the survivor's whole mindset. Their strength wasn't just handed to them. It wasn't luck. It was earned, forged, deliberately, through the very things the mockers spent all their time laughing at. You see, the survivor's preparation was this quiet, steady accumulation of resilience. They paid the price early, on their own terms. They chose to embrace difficulty when it was still manageable. They faced challenges, they shouldered responsibility, and they endured discomfort voluntarily. This wasn't punishment for them, it was training.
And you can see the contrast most clearly right here. Look at how they view pain. For the mocker, it's something to be avoided at all costs. But for the survivor, it's a tool, it's preparation. And that one fundamental difference, it determines absolutely everything when a crisis finally hits.
So, where does all this leave us? We've seen both paths now, and we've arrived at the inescapable choice. And the thing is,
The outcome isn't about some cosmic judge handing out sentences. It's more like a mirror. It's just about what your actions reflect back at you.
Yeah, it's so important to see this consequence not as a punishment, but as a revelation. It doesn't exist to hurt you, it just reveals what was or what wasn't built on the inside. It exposes the hollowness behind all that laughter.
When it all comes down to it, it really boils down to this simple choice. The mocker's path, the path of avoidance, it looks so easy at first, doesn't it? But it leads to devastation. Meanwhile, the survivor's path of preparation. It's tough, it's arduous, but it leads to a resilient, truly life-affirming existence.
In the end, it's almost like a universal law. Reality rewards foresight, and it punishes neglect. It's that simple. Life rewards those who prepare, and it exposes those who try to avoid the hard work of building real character. That's the lesson that just endures through everything. So, a price has to be paid. There's no getting around it. The only question is when. You either pay the price of discipline now, or you pay the much heavier price of regret later. And that choice, it seems, is up to each and every one of us.